Today's guest is retired military officer and brewer, Rob Truscott. From navigating helicopters by starlight to fighting cancer head on, Rob now finds purpose in brewing beer, riding motorcycles, and living by the philosophy, memento mori. Remember, you will die. So live your best damn life. Please welcome Rob Truscott to the Rebel Rebel. This episode of the Rebel Rebel is brought to you by my book, BrandJitsu. I've spent over 25 years in the trenches helping artists, entrepreneurs, and brands stop being ignored. I took everything I've learned, the wins, the hard lessons, the frameworks that actually work, and I put it into one book. It's called BrandJitsu, Move Your Brand from Meh to Memorable, and it'll help you tell your story in a way that people actually remember. Get it at your favorite bookstore or visit brandjitsu.com. Welcome to the Rebel Rebel. I'm your host, Michael Dargie, and somewhere across the world, and I actually know where this time, please welcome to the show, Rob Truscott. How the hell are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. And yeah, you were actually pretty close to my place when we were riding out of town. You passed like just over a mile away from my place.
Oh, man. So just so that people in the world know what I know, where are you located? We don't need the street address.
Yeah, I'm in a suburb of Halifax, Nova Scotia called Bedford.
And I can't recall if I told you this. Maybe I did. But when I was down there, so I did a motorcycle tour with you that you were that you planned out and led us on through Freedom Biker Tours. And my grandmother used to have a toy shop, and I want to say it was on Argyle Street. And I used to go there every summer. Our parents would put us on a plane and ship us to my grandparents for the summer. And yeah.
Argyle Street would be the place for that. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, beautiful part of the country. If you've never been, you definitely should be. And Rob, what are you up to out there? Like, what's your deal? What's your thing?
Well, so my whole backstory is I'm retired military. I was, medically induced retirement due to bladder cancer. So I took one of my sort of hobbies from that I started in the 90s, and now that funds my motorcycle parts and vacation funds, which is brewing beer. But on the side, I help other veterans with marketing and things like that.
Amazing. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. Let's go back in time to young Rob, and I don't know what age this Rob is, but did you imagine when you were a young Rob, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, I don't know, that you were going to be in military service? B, that you're going to brew beer, C, you're going to ride motorcycles?
So in order, my mom enjoys pointing out from my grade 1 sort of like school book that because I noticed my dad and my uncles, they all had bent tailgates on their GMC pickup. So I was going to be a GMC pickup tailgate salesman when I was 6. Then we moved off grid into the mountains, and then I discovered horses are really slow. So I got into biking in the early 80s when I traded up from the horse, and then living in the off-grid farm in outside of small town BC, I realized that I needed an exit strategy because I wasn't exactly smart enough to get the big scholarships. And my parents were back to the land hippies from the late 60s, early 70s. Oh, wow. And so life was very simple for us. So, if I didn't earn scholarships, there wasn't a big pot of money, and I'm too cheap to go into debt for an education. So the Military Recruiting Center in Kamloops, BC had some pretty fun offers that I thought, flying sounds fun.
Okay. Well, and as it would. So you end up at the recruiting center, and they sell you on this idea of a career in aviation.
Yeah. So I walked in, of course, Top Gun came out like mid 80s, 84-ish. So of course, you walk in and say, I want to be a pilot. And then they send me off to testing and go, you're too big, you're too tall. And so it's like, we can offer you navigator. And I said, what's a navigator do? It's kind of like, sure, I'll try that. So off I went after high school to basic training, where they made me shave a very epic mullet and go to a really short haircut. And so from there, I went off and flew basically wearing an Air Force uniform. I was a backseat driver of Sea Kings on Navy ships.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's rad.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was
and we're talking like actual maps, right? And like sextants and like,
yeah, literally, my training in Winnipeg, we actually had to use the stars for navigation. So they had a little periscope you stuck up through the top of the aircraft, and you had to find the right star, and then go to some calculations. Go, I am roughly here. Then I'm roughly here, and then you would triangulate your position somewhere over northern Manitoba. That's how I learned. I learned that.
That is so cool. Like, do you ever find yourself looking at the stars and just silently calculating where you are?
Well, like, I'm not that smart to have the books memorized, but like, we literally had big stacks of books you had to sort through and go, this star, this location, this declination, and do some calculations and gazintas, and then so you do all that. That was just the fun part. And then I went to the mighty Sea King, which they started trying to replace in 1979, and but I started flying
still trying to replace.
No, it's done. They replaced it in 2018. Yeah.
Oh, good.
And,
okay.
But it had, because it was always on the list for replacement, they didn't upgrade a lot of stuff. So, you had a lot of, we made jokes about it being a light bright for the nav system, but it was a lot of seat of your pants stuff that I really enjoyed, because it's just you. You're in the middle of the ocean, that whole geometry and vector addition when you were in high school. So, the ship is here going that way, therefore, and you're going to go fly over here. Therefore, where do you meet the ship? Well, you're not going to come back this way. You have to go that way. And you're in the middle of the ocean. So if you screw it up, there's no ship there.
Oh, that's bad. How many missions did you fly ish? Or do you know to a number?
I don't have a number of missions. It was almost 3,000 flying hours over my flying career. So, like, you start off with, your first tour is you fly most of your hours as the young operational guy, always deployed. I was away 300 days a year for like 3 years. Then I went off to be an instructor, which you do just as much simulator time as you do flying. Then I went back for more of a flying supervisor tour, where I was now in the office being the senior guy, helping others. So I wasn't doing the operations as much. Then I went into more operational planning and things like that, and into the the strategy of running the fleet kind of thing was one of the last jobs I did in the Sea King world.
Holy moly.
And then I moved to Yellowknife for a desk job.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I'd been flying for almost 20 years straight, which is fairly unheard of for a guy. And they were like, so we're going to post you. And they were like, so would you like, a staff job in Winnipeg or Ottawa? And I counteroffered with Yellowknife. And they were like, okay. Yeah. And so I went up there, and I was a planner for the big emergency response plans and exercises and all those things, working with the government departments to try and, because everything up there, you have to work together in the Arctic. You cannot do things alone. And so I was working with all the government departments, and we were planning big events like Op the Nooks and stuff like that. And then circumstances said, you have cancer. And then that's when they shipped me down to Alberta, and that turned my life a little upside down.
All right. And that's a very clever and amazing segue. So
I learned that in my public affairs training. Bridging statements.
So I have so many things to say about all these things. So I'm going to go on my list. And first off, thank you so much for everything that you've done. That's kick ass. Like, you're operating at such a high level and keeping so many people safe. And thank you for that. And then to discover that you have cancer, that's got to rock the boat a little bit.
That rocking the boat would be an understatement. It's like taking the boat and just picking it up and turning it upside down and giving it a shake.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I guess the question is, you're in recovery. What do we say?
So my cancer, bladder cancer, is the fifth most common cancer in Canada, fourth most common in men. Men are 75% of the cases. And the thing about it is that was found by accident, but it has a 60% recurrence rate. Through sort of the worst chance of recurrence, but they tell me the recurrence rate is around 60%. So before I left Alberta, the one oncologist kind of said, well, you're way younger than the average patient, so the odds of it coming back eventually are pretty good. Okay. So that's how I structure my life. Is based on sort of those thoughts.
Is there? So let's talk about that a little bit, because you've got this great shirt, memento mori,
from Mad Hatter Industries, local veteran company.
Yes, and
shameless plug for Corey.
Yeah, and I'm dying to have Corey on the show. We'll get him here eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess talk a little bit about that. Like, now you live as if the recognition that we're all going to die sometime.
Yeah, so that became a big part of, going from someone who was, working the long hours at the peak of your game. The stuff I was doing was one of a kind. There's not a lot of other people doing it. And then taking that and going, we're applying the brakes, full stop, go.
Like today.
Yeah. And literally I went from the doctor telling me I had cancer on May 14th, 2014, to I was calling my wife, who happened to be in Halifax visiting our kids, and saying, we're moving. I did that like early July when the military said, okay, well, we don't want you to stay in Yellowknife because it's fairly isolated. And they moved me down to Edmonton. So I moved down to Edmonton around the 10th of August-ish, but I had to leave due to a bunch of reasons. I left on like July 31st, spent 4 days stuck on the side of the highway in Betchico due to forest fires closing the road in front of us and behind us. And then I started treatments on the 22nd of August that year. And I'd already had 2 surgeries by then. I've had 5 surgeries total, and then interspersed among all my treatments. And then the last treatment was 26th of January 2018. And then then again in May of 2018, the military says, okay, we are going to medically retire you now. You're due to my rank and position. I do understand this. I'm not going to be one of those veterans who goes, oh my God, I should have been doing other things. I acknowledged, because of my rank and position, I knew this would lead to a medical release. I didn't fight it. I knew it. I had been the person giving other members of the military, sorry, you're being released. Here's why. Here's your papers. So I knew that was coming. I wasn't going to fight it. But one of the things they offer is there value in, up to 3 years of continued service. So of course we had just found out we had a grandson on the way 6 months earlier. And so it became let's move back to Halifax. So I moved back to Halifax because the Sea King community, there were a lot of vacancies. So I said I can be of value there and figure out how I'm going to better work myself up to being able to be a contributing member of society. I didn't want to just stop and do nothing. I feel I have to keep going. And that whole transition going from full stop into, like, for the first year, my oncologist wasn't talking life expectancy. His statements were, we have it contained. It's inside your bladder. We do not have it under control. And so a lot of conversations with him were about, okay, how are we going to work this? And so, of course, you come to terms with your own mortality. And now this is a long way into the story to get to memento mori, which goes back a long ways to remember you are mortal. So you will die. And one part of my story with this is, had you asked me a month before my emergency surgery and first diagnosis, had you asked me what my plans were, I would have said, well, in 5 years, I'm going to do this and live the rest of my life. And then you have this one day in 2014 that all these dreams and plans you have on a whiteboard are just erased. Or if you wrote them on an Etch-a-Sketch, you gave it a good shake. And now you're starting from zero. And so So memento mori is remember you will die. And its flip side is memento vivere, to live your best life. So now, you kind of got to go in with that mentality. And,
Right.
we can come back to that more later, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how, but you have to have a mindset of, living your best life.
Absolutely. So I mean, we've known each other for a minute, as the kids say. We've known each other for a bit. We only met
Yeah.
in person this last summer on this ride, and you had put together this really cool tour of the Maritimes through Freedom Biker Tours.
Yeah. JD booked all
And
the hotels and I adjusted a lot of his routing.
and what I really appreciated, I want to say military precision. I've never been in the military, but I always imagined that that's what it is that you had things to do, places to be. You knew when we were going to get there. You knew that things were going to happen. The snafu was going to show up and make sure that we got to adjust, but you already had a contingency for it.
Yeah, that's the strategic mindset I have. And I have a hard time turning that off.
Right. But I mean, it makes everybody feel comfortable. There's like a whole bunch of us in this group knowing that, well, I don't know what they knew because I came in a week after you guys had already started, but my feeling was during this tour that it was all good. Like even if things, a road was closed or something happened that didn't allow us to go here, we already had a plan B.
Yeah.
And we just did that. I don't know that anybody other than me noticed that there was
the military term is branch plans.
Yeah. Is what?
Branch plans. You have a plan. There's a meme out there that I save on my phone a bunch of times. Build the plan, execute the plan, expect the plan go off the rails, make a new plan.
New plan.
Yep. So my military world, one of the jobs I did as a senior guy, myself and another senior guy, we taught the up and coming mission commanders, and some of the things we taught them was how to plan and how to set your mind. The Army calls it estimate of the situation, or at least they used to. I don't know if they still call it the same way, but all the militaries of the world have a planning process. They have what they would call their OODA loop, which when I went through marketing school, when I used some of my education funding after I released, they everywhere has the same concept of, look at what's going on, figure out what you want to do about it, see what happened when you did something about it, then assess the results, then keep going in that circle. And whatever you call it, it's the same idea. It's just everywhere has their different way of talking about it.
Wild. What is your I just want to go back to what you did in the military for a second, because I feel that there's probably some stories here. Like what's the most chaotic / incredible thing you did? The thing that sticks with you being like, oh my God, like I'm so glad I was there to help with that.
The one biggest that probably people have heard about is Swissair 111. I had just climbed into bed at home when the phone call rang of airliner down off Peggy's Cove. So everyone, if you can, come to work. And so I went in and I was on aircraft number 3 that launched late, 2 or 3 in the morning to go down there. And I was there when the sun came up, and then you started seeing the debris field, things like that. Because at first we were flying around at 4 in the morning with handheld spotlights trying to see what we could see. And so that's how we started that. But, that whole thing of Swissair 111 that actually consumed us for a few months afterwards.
Wow. God, and I don't want to dwell on that, obviously, but that's huge. That's a I got chills even just you mentioning it.
Well, when I was telling you some of the stories on the tour, that's why it's one of those very memorable nights. There's kind of no way around it where you can't say it's not good. You're going to forget about it. You're not. And that's, why I do also support a lot of PTSD charities, is depending on how people were involved in events like that, has really impacted a lot of people, because you can't forget.
Right.
It's like some people say, what were you doing when the Twin Towers fell? Well, my military friends is like, what part of Swissair 111 were you?
Right.
How did it affect you? Things like that. So that was a big one for me and a lot of my friends.
Yeah. Wow.
I've had other ones where you're just more rewarding because you actually save someone and do a rescue and things like that. But some of those you literally trip and fall into and go, oops. Actually, there was one that was just a short notice, happened to be happening just over there. So, and then I had forgotten about it, but the guy who was flying with me, he talked about it at his retirement party because he goes, that was like my third flight in a Sea King. And we went and did this, and Rob said, okay, we're doing this. And he's telling this story. And I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. But for him, he was so new on it. And we're medevacing this guy into Port Hardy, BC off a ship at sea. And,
oh my gosh.
And it's like, but for him, this was like his third flight qualified as crew.
Wow. What do you think? Yeah, maybe this is unfair to ask, but like when people look back and say, what did Rob teach me? What do you think is one of the things they would say?
Well, funny you bring it up that way because I have a friend who has used me to, when he was an instructor, he would say things, go, I learned this from Rob. And, but it was more about thinking outside the box. One guy described me as, you have a problem, you hold the box of straws up to Rob and he'll reach in and go, this is the straw you want. And it was just because, you have to, it just becomes a problem solving mindset is how to look at different aspects of the problem. Because every problem is a set of variables and a lot of variables you can't change. So figure out which ones you can change and then start manipulating them to your advantage.
That's outstanding advice. Thank you.
But that's also when you think about when you have a problem, what can you control? What can you do about it?
Right.
Because don't stress about the stuff you can't control.
Let's jump over to making beer. What? And this is I don't want to not dig more into this. I'm just in my brain. I was just like, oh man, this feels like a natural way to slide over to something that's simple but as complex.
And now for something completely different,
right?
And yeah. So
how did you get there? I guess.
Well, so back in the 90s, I may have been the guy that was brewing beer in a 5-gallon bucket in his closet in the barracks because he was too cheap to spend all his money at the mess.
Did you ever watch MASH?
Yeah.
Were you like Hawkeye and except with beer instead of gin?
I don't want to give myself that much credibility, but yeah, that's
all right.
That might have been a goal.
Got it. All right.
Sure. So that was a bit of a hobby for a little while. One of my standing jokes nowadays is that back in 1994, I entered my first brewing competition, and I won it. And so at that point, I retired from competition brewing, undefeated. I've never entered a beer in a competition ever again.
Perfect.
So, right. And so anyway, so I was getting ready to retire in spring of 2020, and which actually eventually retired in spring of 21. But of course, at the time, my job was as a senior officer. I was in charge of a group of people, and we were doing some of the administrative functions of 12 wing, things like that. And so I was kind of had the idea, like one of the programs when you're being medically retired out is they will let you try to get some experience with civilian companies, things like that. So of course, leading up to March 2020, I had a couple irons in the fire that looked pretty promising. Then, of course, work from home happened, and no company's going to take an intern as work from home. So I happened to be at my brand new craft brewery that opened in May of 2020, and and basically asked him how it's going. And I said, well, sometimes you can use an extra set of hands. And I said, boy, have I got a deal for you. I know a guy who can work for free.
What?
And then I can work for beer. And so I became the assistant brewer who would work randomly anywhere between 0 and 5 days a month when they needed me for different things.
So cool.
Then that turned into eventually a bit more of a paid gig, and then when the brewery sold from the original 2 owners, the next owner asked if I would stay on and be the full-time brewer. That has turned into more work than I really want. So I have an assistant brewer now.
Yay! Oh, and so the cycle continues.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh man. What's the name of the brewery?
Great Roads Brewing in Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia.
All right. And what's your favorite? Are you a hops guy? Like, what's your thing?
I'm more of a malt, like the Irish reds that are all nice malty sweetness.
Nice.
I don't see. I'm also. It's kind of. I don't want to say it's bad, but we don't have I don't enter our beers in competitions because the beers we brew and from the original owner's recipes, which I think are awesome. And then the ones we've added since I took over, they have what they call BJCP, Beer Judge Competition Program thing. And some of those beers where you have the style guideline that says, oh, you need this much bitterness, this much hoppy. I don't like a bunch of those beers because, it's just too much of a hop bomb or too bitter, but they score really well on this scale. But I want something that's more drinkable. Yeah, but I want stuff that's drinkable, so you'll drink more than one. And so I'm really partial to reds and ambers.
All right.
So of course I also do make a red IPA, but
I'm not a huge IPA fan. I am if you were to give me any beer in the world at any time that I would be happy to have in my hand, it would be a Guinness.
Okay, I have a milk stout that a lot of people really like. So, granted, it's a bit more powerful than Guinness. It's 6%.
What? That's 2 more percent.
Yeah, 50%.
One less.
yeah. But yeah, so that's Guinness is good. We always have a black porter or a stout on tap at all times. That's one of my rules. I like dark beers too. But I actually in tanks right now have 2,000 liters of a double chocolate oatmeal stout for our Christmas.
Oh my God. I had, and I can't remember the name of it. I had a chocolate oatmeal stout maybe 3 years ago that I just loved. Yeah. It's like a meal in a can.
Yep. This one I had a little bit more fun with, mostly because I discovered there's a worldwide cocoa shortage. So I couldn't get the cocoa powder I normally use to help with the chocolate flavor.
Oh.
So I went with the dark cocoa, which hopefully is going to give it more of an Oreo cookie flavor.
Oh my God.
All right. I'm really looking forward to trying it.
I'm coming to Halifax, or are you canning this? Can we ship across borders right now?
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. We won't commit it to the show. I get it.
But maybe if I know someone who's flying that way,
Yeah. Or I might just fly to Halifax just to have some. That sounds worth the trip, and we could just hang out. Rob, what's the thing that you do just for you?
Mostly motorcycle rides. You'll hear a lot of people talk about how motorcycling is good for your mental health and stuff like that. And for me, it is. And some people, can make, I make the joke is just that way I let the wind whistle through my ears. And that helps just clear out the cobwebs kind of thing. And, and so because, as you saw on the ride, I don't try to make it a race. I want people to sit up, look around, enjoy the view. For me, motorcycle riding is take your time, enjoy the ride. And for me, if people ask, I will state motorcycling is about the journey, not the destination.
100%.
And that's, I've almost got 100,000 kilometers on my bike now. And, I'm trying to figure out how much longer I'm going to keep that before I replace it with another one, because I need something that's going to get a lot of miles.
And what have you got right now?
Victory Cross Country. Okay. I bought it the day the doctor told me I had cancer. So
shit. So it's going on the wall somewhere at the end of this thing.
Yeah. So I made some jokes that if I keep it, maybe I'll try to turn it into a cafe racer or something. But I don't have a shop anymore. But so what had happened is because I was living in Yellowknife, they flew my wife and I down to Edmonton for the doctor's appointment after the emergency surgery, and we kind of knew cancer was on the table, and so we fly down, and it's from Yellowknife. It was you left Yellowknife at 6 a.m. You fly down, get a rental car, go to your appointments, drive back to the airport, get on a plane, you fly back to Yellowknife the same day.
Oh my God.
And so went to the appointment like 10 o'clock in the morning. You have the appointments, you have cancer. Okay. Next steps. What are we doing? Go through all that. And then go down, get in the parkade, jump in the car, says, well, we got go for a pub for lunch. In Edmonton, we just drove down 50th Street because I knew that was one that would eventually take me easily out to the highway, that kind of thing. And then I pulled into this little pub right beside a Cycle Works dealer. And so we're sitting in the parking lot of this pub right beside the bike shop and, doing all the phone calls. She's calling the kids. I'm calling my mom and my sisters and, doing all those phone calls saying, yeah, it's confirmed I have cancer, that kind of stuff. And then so we decide, well, I'll go in the pub and have lunch. And I come out of the pub and go, you know something? Because I had recently sold the motorcycle I had to a buddy in Yellowknife. And so I had my bike in Yellowknife, and this was in the fall. He had said, oh, Rob, you're just too big for that bike. You look like a monkey on a football. You need to sell it. So I did that thing where you throw out a number and think, if he's willing to pay it, I'm willing to part with it. So sure. I go away up to further north. And then when I come back, I walk in and he just hands me an envelope full of $100 bills. And
oh my God.
I guess I need to look at another bike. But this was Yellowknife. We're going into winter. So I figured I'd worry about it in spring. So of course the spring is here, May 14th. The doctor says, you have cancer. So I told my wife, I think I want to get a new motorcycle instead of buying used. Of course, she's not going to argue. This is, I have this one silver bullet that I could use.
Well played, Rob. Well played, sir.
If I'm going to ask for something, this is the day to ask for it. And so I'm like, so we go into the Cycle Works, which is a Polaris dealer, and talking to Jay, the guy, and he was like, so we're looking at different bikes, and he's like, well, if you want a black one, I have it in the box right over there. And I'm like, how much of a deposit would you like? And so we flew back to basically put a deposit down, then basically told him, okay, we're not sure when we'll be down again next. I'll call you, give you a few days notice, take it out of the box. And then, so we're on our move. The military short notice moved me down to Edmonton. So you fly down real quick. You got a week to buy a house, get it inspected, and get back to Yellowknife. So we bought this house, had possession all planned out. Then it was like, okay, plan the move out of Yellowknife, which was complicated in itself. Then it's jump in the vehicle, start driving, get a couple hours out of town, highway closed in front of you due to forest fire, then go to turn around, highway closed behind you due to forest fire. So you're camping on the side, you're camping on the road. Now, as luck would have it, I had been having drinks a couple days before with a buddy of mine who was going to be driving south with his RV, his travel trailer. But he had a gas half ton, and we had just sold the year before our large fifth wheel, but still had the Ram 3500 dually diesel. So over beer, a couple days before we were leaving town, he's like, oh, I'm concerned because, you leave town, it says next gas 308 kilometers. So if you're in a full-size gas pickup towing a trailer, you are concerned.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I'm not. So if you leave an hour ahead of me, and if I see you on the side of the road, I'll pull over and I'll tow your trailer for you. And so, of course, we get to the stoppage, and he's 4 cars in front of me. So,
oh, shit.
So here we are on the road, pulls his awning out, get it. And now we're sitting in lawn chairs. And And of course, the movers won't take booze, so that meant all my liquor cabinet was in my pickup. So 4 days, we're basically camping on the side of the road.
Hilarious! That's such a Canadiana adventure, if I've ever heard one.
It is, yeah. And then when they finally let us through, we literally blast down to Edmonton as fast as we can. We showed up a day late to sign the papers, but the lawyer did us a solid by we roll in first thing in the morning, sign all the papers. She picks up the phone, calls the other side's lawyer, going, "Oh, we forgot to put those in a courier yesterday. They'll be there today."
Nice.
Yeah. So but of course, when they ask, "Oh, why are you moving to Edmonton?" "Oh, cancer treatments, all that stuff." And she had just come back to work from her own cancer adventure.
Oh my God.
So yeah. So when you have cancer, start talking about cancer, you will find a lot more people have it. A lot of people just don't like talking about it, which is sort of a bladder cancer thing, because we don't have, it's one of the top 5 cancers, the most fatal in Canada, yet it's also second to last for funding and research.
And I mean, if quite honestly, until I met you, I didn't even know it was a thing. I guess I probably knew it was a thing. There's I could probably have knee cancer.
Yeah,
it's like, what?
I didn't know about it till the doctor told me about it, and I'm like, that's a thing, and I have it. Huh. Well, there's me doing everything different again.
Way to go, Rob.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So let me put this in your head. So you're riding your bike, and I missed the Cabot Trail, and I'm sad about
it's your own
it.
downfall.
Yeah, it is my fault. Whatever.
But you got to come up again.
I know. Yeah, and I'm going to ride out there, and I'll just meet you on it.
Sounds good.
Anyway, so you're on the Cabot Trail. You're riding along, and you're by yourself. You have there's no weight on you at all. You don't have to lead anybody.
Yeah, not watching the mirror to make sure everyone's still there, not counting headlights. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you. And you're in that moment that if you ride a bike, you all know you're smelling the smells, you're feeling the feels, there is no second to go. There's no second ahead of you. It is the moment that you're in. What is the one thing that you wish the world knew?
That's a good one. Because I had a first experience where I got hit by a wave on my motorcycle on Friday.
A wave?
A wave.
Like from the ocean?
Yeah. So when you're going from the mainland to Cape Breton, you're on a little causeway, and it was super windy. And then, you see all these wet spots on the road, and you're thinking, and I'm with a group of bikes, and I'm at the back, and I'm watching this looking out at the water going, oh, here comes the wave that's going to hit me. And
oh my God,
you don't have you're in the pack of bikes. So you don't have you're in traffic, you got a wind, you're leaning like this. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to get wet. And then it's like, get all the spray on your glasses and all that stuff. For me, a lot of times it's it goes back to when you had Mike Terry on here. You have I just wish people could see this the way I see it. That's what usually goes through my mind. There's times I've been on the Cabot Trail, actually with myself or one or two others, and you're coming down, you're north of Cheticamp, heading south. The ocean's on your right. The way I like to do the Cabot Trail, the sun is to your right. I don't want to say low on the horizon, but low enough that you just get that nice sheen coming off the water. You got the waves crashing, and it's just like, I don't know how to describe that in a better way. I just wish people could see what I'm seeing.
Oh my God, I love that. You travel quite a bit.
With my how to get things done in the next 5 years, yes, I brew beer for motorcycle parts and travel funding. And that's but I have my little marketing side gig to help veterans. And eventually, if that makes money, then I could work from a cruise ship balcony. Haven't you tried that?
When I travel, here's what happens when I travel is I'm up at 4 a.m, wherever I am, and I'm doing all of my work before 8 a.m. So that I can have the rest of the day off.
Yeah.
That and I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, do you think that it's I don't want to call it moral imperative, but maybe it is, to travel and see the world?
Yes. The military blessed me with a lot of unique travels. And the one thing that I can say that when I've talked to other people who have traveled, it's you don't know what you don't know. Not, and that's a big statement my friend Neil, who you've met, he has, which is you don't know what you don't know. And when you start traveling to other countries, like I just came back from Rome, and the history that's there, walking around the Colosseum and things like that, and you're looking just going, okay, how many thousands of years ago did they build that and it's still standing?
Right.
So who taught those engineers? But you start looking at the carvings and stones, and you see the rocks that are just worn from people walking on them, and think,
yeah, the steps that are divoted.
Yeah. And it's just like, the history of these places is just, we did the hop on, hop off bus where you put in the earphones and they give you the stories as you go around. And it's like, oh, Julius Caesar was killed right over there. And it's like, until you get out and see the world, you don't know what you're missing. And,
yeah,
a lot of times you go to a lot of places. It does make me very happy to be a Canadian. We do have, life is different here than it is in the rest of the world. And you start traveling. Of course, the military took me to a lot of places that were less advantageous than North America. And so you start realizing how blessed we are. And that's, to me, the joke first world problems is very relevant. I know I complain about a lot of things, but, it's all perspective.
Yeah. What's your, when you're traveling, I love eating. I love finding.
I'm 6'5", 300 pounds. I love to eat too.
What's your? It just comes to you, the place and the meal that you would have, and is it a thing that you share with others?
Not really, because I've been known to walk into restaurants and go, "Yes, please."
Just
feed
whatever
me.
It happens to be.
Yes. If you have a special, I'll take it. If not, surprise me.
Oh my God.
I've done that before.
So brave.
It's a lot of fun. But I'm not allergic to anything, and I'm willing to try anything.
Damn, dude. Okay. I'm inspired by you, because I'm not that guy. I freak out at the weirdest stuff.
Oh no, I remember when I was in Japan and Korea when we were over there, and it's like I'm walking into a restaurant that I had to duck to get in, and me and a buddy are just pointing to people beside us and going, 2. And for all I know, it was a cold soup that tasted great. For all we know, they were pouring dishwater into a bowl, going, put some lettuce on it, and then they're all sitting there watching, going, we fed them dishwater. It could have been that. We don't know.
Yeah. Or fugu, where it could be the poisonous thing ever, and
then put a chicken foot in it or something. Yeah, no.
Man,
just how can you say you've tried it? You're willing to try things if you haven't really just gone all out.
Well, this leads me to my next question. What's the one thing that you haven't done yet that you plan on doing before you shuffle off this mortal coil?
To me, I don't know if I have a thing I have to do. I just want to keep doing more things. And
I love that. What a great answer.
Because, I don't want to feel disappointed if I don't achieve something.
Love it.
So if I just keep doing more things, visiting new cities, doing new things, and just trying it, that's how you figured it.
Love it. All we get on this ride is experiences. That's what we get to keep, I believe.
Yeah. That's a lot. Some of my theme songs. There's one called "No One Gets Out Alive" called the British group Thunder. No one gets out alive. That's right.
Memento mori.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great segue. So there's these people, Rob, and you're aware of these people. They're like the the rebels in waiting, the people about to embark on a rebellion of some sort, or they're spooling up, getting ready to rebel, or they just rebelled and they're like, oh shit, what have I done? What advice do you have for these people to help them get them where they're going?
Well, the simplest thing is you got to start now. Everyone says, the third journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. But if it's going to take you 2 years to achieve something, it's still going to be 2 years away now or next month. So start now. And so we go back to the memento mori is if you remember, you are mortal and only have that limited time on this planet hurtling through the vastness of space. You have to, just kind of go for it. And, I've got the luxury of military pension, so I'm actually in a better place than a lot of people. And I acknowledge that. And people would say, well, it's easy for you to say. Yes, it is. But I had to learn it the hard way. And so
you also did some shit that all of us haven't done either to get there. So I wouldn't say that you got it easy by any stretch, sir.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of a thing, I had a person say, oh, it must be nice to have the military pension. And I'm thinking to myself, but I missed a lot of things for that. And like the standing joke is that it took my wife 5 years to remember my birthday because I was never home for it. That's just the way it worked out. So, and we actually, even now, we don't stress if something's going on around our anniversary. Oh, we'll just have dinner another night. It's not a big deal. Back to the memento mori. The big thing is you have to live your best life, memento vivere. And so if you do the things that make you happy and you have something that could put you on a path to make you happy, why aren't you on that path? And so it's just, but the journey of 1,000 miles, you got to take that step first. I had spent a lot of time saying, okay, I'm going to start that in 5 years. It's way out there. And so I did mention to you before about a challenge coin, and the military is kind of big on challenge coins. And I had this one presented to me over the weekend. And
oh my God, where did you get that? Who gave it to you?
A friend of mine's son, actually. We were having beer in Cape Breton on this fundraiser for U.S. veterans, and he gave it to me. And I'm quite excited by it because on the back, it has the big thing of course, big thumbs. Not sure if you can read that, but basically,
that's amazing.
It says your time is limited, and nothing kind of reminds you of that until the doctor doesn't want to talk about life expectancy after a cancer diagnosis, and so that makes you think about that. So your time is limited, so go for it.
Where can people find out more about you and support the crazy stuff you do, Rob?
So I have a bunch of different places.
We'll put them all down here, but tell them.
Yeah. So I got coming soon is the Bladder Cancer Awareness Walk. Bladder Cancer Awareness Month is in May, but our awareness walk is in September. It's happening at places all across Canada, including Calgary, this weekend, the 20th, 21st. And so that's a bccwalk.ca. If anyone wants a tax deductible receipt, because people need tax receipts. But, I goof off on YouTube. I have a couple different channels. Dead Knot is my idiot alter ego. That's where
Can you spell that for us, please?
DeadNought. And the story with that is when I lived in Edmonton, a lot of times people ask me how it's going. My answer was not dead.
Right.
So that turned into, I wasn't sure for a while if Dead Knot was going to be a pirate. Because Pirates of the Caribbean was a big thing at times. So could I make a personality of Dead Knot the pirate? No. So I just kind of that sort of segued into me learning video editing. I learned during my convalescence, the military said, you can't come to work because you're not going to be of use to us. So I started doing courses because, small fact, did you know that LinkedIn Learning, used to be lynda.com, is free using your public library card for most major libraries?
What?
Yep.
That's a hack.
Yep. You can get a free basically LinkedIn Learning account through your public library. So I got mine through the Edmonton Public Library when I lived there. Made a new one when I moved out here to Halifax by going to get a library card. So LinkedIn Learning can be free. And so I was taking website courses. Then I used some of the military money to make myself a sort of a digital marketing company where, I try to help some of my veteran friends with advice and things like that. And actually, it was really funny this weekend. I actually had a veteran friend come play Saturday night at the hotel where I was this event with a bunch of veterans. And so the organizer, the Cabot Trail biker, he had said there's a gag going, and it's an inappropriate picture, but it's on my Facebook. And the one of the birthday parties that was coming up or just passed, and but so they were making shirts because that's Daniel's gig, is to make his Cabot Trail biker shirts, things like that. So he had made some shirts for this, and he had decided to Google Brian Doucette, the guy who was playing, and so he had. Then he goes, "I Googled you, and you're everywhere." It's like, well, Rob told me how to do social media, and I'm like, "Yeah." Well, of course, it's like, but Brian's a good friend. I like to support his music. I arranged for him to play a rolling barrage event here in Halifax on the HMCS Sackville, which is a World War II Corvette, downtown Halifax. We actually had a big party on there. Brian, one of his friends, played it. And then that got Brian the introduction. So he actually has a song that he filmed the video on the Sackville.
Oh my God.
And the song's called Veterans Till the End. And, so it's like everything has these big circle loops that there's always connections for a reason.
Yeah. That is amazing. I'm so inspired by you, Rob, and just what you've built and the life that you're living. It is the stuff of legend. I appreciate you.
Well, I do try to stand out in a crowd and try to, I tell people I'm dancing to the tune of the brass band across town, and because I can't carry a tune in a bucket. So if I'm dancing, it's not to the music. I try to have a lot of fun, fingers in a lot of pies, doing a lot of things, trying to do what I can to help others in different ways. And that's what you got to do with your life. You live your best life.
Love it, Rob. Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been extraordinary.
I knew it'd be fun to just chat with you. And I was like, I wonder if maybe we could go really oddball and do a Drop Parent Panda episode.
Oh my God. Panda would love that so much.
Because I'd be willing to go a completely different direction.
Something you might not know about her is she has a military history degree.
Oh.
So she has an arts degree and a military history minor or something like that.
Yeah. So because the reason I went aviation is because back in high school, I was, this was pre-internet stuff. I was always checking out World War II history books. And then that got me into aviation. So it was really funny when they, as one of my officer development projects, had to do a presentation on some World War II aviation. So I picked Bomber Command, and because that was right up my alley. It was an absolute blast.
Yeah. Okay, well, we have to do this because, as you may or may not know, we're doing Drop Parent Panda Save Canada now.
I know, and you talked about an episode, some stuff that happened out here when on a recent episode, but they don't have that pumpkin regatta anymore. But if you Google it, there are pictures of people in pumpkins paddling across a lake.
I know, it's so ridiculous. I love
That's
Canada
what we do.
So much.
We do ridiculous. We do it well.
I know. Yes, and we're all in.
Yeah, Yellowknife with the ugly dog and truck contest. Buddy of mine would loan out his dog because it was like missing an ear, blind in one eye, and called it lucky, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Isn't that where Sourtoe is?
No, that's in Dawson City.
Dawson City.
Yukon. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. Oh, Rob, this has been a blast. You're a prince.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Hey, if you're an artist, scientist, entrepreneur, or business owner who wants a smooth and proven method to find, shape, and share your story with the world, head on over to BrandJitsu.com and order a copy of my book, BrandJitsu, Move Your Brand from Meh to Memorable. I've been your host, Michael Dargie, and this has been the RebelRebel podcast. It's a podcast for creative rebels and entrepreneurs all over the world. And hey, if you're a rebel or you know a rebel, head on over to the RebelRebelPodcast.com and fill out the guest request form. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.